See? Oh God, I'm making it worse. Trying to get my eyes right, but I seem to be just making my situation worse here. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday and happy Black History Month. We are here on a mission to make this the blackest Black History Month ever. Oh, okay, I can see now. All right. I'm Farmer Letitia. I am growing and beekeeping in Georgia, Zone 8B. I have a couple little notes here. So that's what I'm looking at if you're wondering what I'm looking at, to try to keep myself on track here so I don't veer off and go into tangents too often. Maybe this will help keep me on track. But we're here to talk about all things bees. But first, I've got a few disclaimers I don't want to forget about. The first disclaimer is, like I said, I'm living and beekeeping and farming in Georgia. So if you are interested in beekeeping somewhere else or live somewhere else, I probably won't be able to help you because beekeeping regulations or beekeeping is regulated by the state organizations, usually the local ag offices, and so every state is different. So please keep that in mind as I'm sharing what I'm doing and, what my beliefs are and how I'm beekeeping. Keep in mind, if you live outside of Georgia, that this may not apply to you or it may be different for you. So I suggest you check with your local ag office to see what regulations or whatever you're questioning applies to you specifically. The state is a great place to start, but then obviously you have to drill down because, we're heavily regulated. So start with your state. They'll give you a general idea, and then go into your city and see what regulations the city has regarding beekeeping and whatever practices or certifications or whatever you might have. So I'm adding the disclaimer that you need to check with your local government officials, basically. And you should do that anyway, even if you're in Georgia. But this is what I'm doing in Georgia, which may or may not be the right thing, or may or may not be legal. I don't know, but it's what I do. So the second disclaimer is, like I said, I'm sharing my perspective, what I believe, and therefore what guides my practices in beekeeping. I'm not sharing the way to be a beekeeper because there's lots of ways to do things. This is just the way that I did it and the way that I do it. If you do it differently or you know someone who does it differently and it works for them, I love that for you. There's lots of ways to do it. So again, it's not right or wrong. It's just different. So different can be beautiful and accepted. Hi, E. Divine Iverson. Look, I got my glasses on and still can't see. Hey. Oh. Okay. And then my last disclaimer is I want to be very upfront and honest that I have an ulterior motive here. The reason I'm showing up, the reason I keep talking about beekeeping, is because I want to see more Black people return to beekeeping, specifically Black women. Beekeeping is a very white space, for lack of a better, white male dominated space. We are very much underrepresented, and I would love to see that change. I don't have to tell y'all that beekeeping started where everything else started. Happy Black History Month. And so I would love to see us return to back to our roots, go back to beekeeping. That's what I would love to see. And so I'm trying to do what I can. And if that means coming up on live, answering random questions and talking about this, I'm happy to do that. If that means more Black people, more Black women will return to beekeeping. Get some bees, y'all. Hopefully I can talk you into that. Okay, so that's all my disclaimers. Just putting it out there. Keep that in mind as I'm going through my little spiel here. So like I said, I am a farmer. I'm a 5th generation farmer, and I am a 1st generation beekeeper. I've been beekeeping for about 3 years now. Yes, I love it, which is why I'm always trying to get more people to do it. Okay. My practice, I guess, so it took me a while, right, to figure out, like, okay, first of all, let me rewind. When I first got into beekeeping, I didn't know nothing. I can't even tell you like what made me think I could or should become a beekeeper. Because let my sister tell it, we are highly allergic, and I should be nowhere near no bees. But I was one day I just woke up and I was like, you know what? What if I kept bees? Anyway, and that started this whole spiral of me just diving deep into bees. And I started by basically learning how bees live in nature, because as a farmer, I like to mimic nature. And what I'm hoping to do, or what I set out to do when I started, was to do the same with beekeeping. I want to beekeep, but I don't want to be like a warden, like a keeper of bees. Like when I first started, I didn't even like that terminology. I don't want to keep the bees. I just want to like create a space. I'm about to sound real hippie, y'all. Whatever. I just want to create a space that invites the bees, that it's a place that they want to live, and therefore they choose to stay. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to like keep them there or force them to stay. And so, very much like how I grow food, the goal for me is to mimic nature. And so when I started setting out to learn how to be a beekeeper, I was studying basically everything I could find about bees in nature. How do bees live in nature? What type of habitat is ideal for them? What do they eat? What seasons do they live? All of this science geeky stuff. Because I think it's important to understand that the way things live in nature, and they're like, how can you mimic something and you don't even know how they live, And so that's where I started studying, putting my nerd hat on and going into the science of how bees live in nature, so that I had a basic understanding, right? And then once I kind of felt like, oh, and I'll say my recommendation to anyone who also wants to nerd out on bees is anything by Dr. Thomas Seeley. Hands down is a winner. Bee Democracy or Honeybee Democracy. Any books by Dr. Thomas Seeley. That's the best place that I have found, the best source for learning about the bees. And so after I nerded out and felt like I had a basic understanding of how bees live in nature, then I was seeking out other bee nerds, other people who liked beekeeping. And so I discovered, because I had no idea that this existed, Beekeepers Association in Georgia. And so I decided to join the Georgia Beekeepers Association, which again, I had no idea existed. I always recommend anyone who's interested in beekeeping to go to a meeting at your local Beekeepers Association. Join a bee club. You do not have to have bees to join the bee club. It's a great place to start out. Like even if you're not sure if you want to be a beekeeper or not, and you just want to kind of like explore it and talk to people who are beekeeping, maybe visit some hives with someone who is already a beekeeper, your local bee club is a great place to start. You can usually find this information on your ag office website, or just Google Beekeepers Association in fill in the blank for your state or your city, or bee club in fill in your state or city, and that'll point you in the right direction. Here in Georgia, we have, I think, more than 50 clubs around the state. Local clubs, they're in different cities or different regions, have beekeeping clubs. And the Georgia Beekeepers Association membership is $12 a year. So it's literally, pennies, right? So to me, it's worth it. So I paid the $12 a year, and I started attending beekeeping meetings, club meetings in the area. And I just started talking to people, listening, asking questions. Most bee clubs have a section at the beginning or the end of their meeting for new beekeepers to just ask questions. They call it like a mentoring session. So new beekeepers can come and ask questions or talk to people, or they'll have a specific topic that's more aligned for new beekeepers to learn. So that's a great place to start. Like I said, that's where I started. That's also, actually, is that where I met? Oh no. So when I joined the bee club, I then attended their conference the following few months. They did a beekeeping conference, and I joined that conference. And at that conference, I met a ton of people. And just like plant people, you'll find that beekeepers are so freaking nice and so willing to help. Everybody remembers starting out with bees and like trying to learn everything you feel like you need to learn. And so they're just so open. And I'll say, I'm putting an asterisk on the statement I made earlier. Even though I have found in my experience that beekeeping is a very old white man space, those old white men are so freaking nice. I haven't had, like, I literally feel like we're all just beekeepers. Nobody sees any differences. We're all just nerds who love bees. When I go to meetings, when I go to conferences, people are just, they come up to you because you look new, you look lost or whatever, or you look different, and they just want to talk to you. Like, I genuinely have not had a negative experience at a beekeeping conference or a beekeeping association meeting, even though nobody in there looks like me. So it feels like a really safe-ish space, if that's even a thing we could say in 2026. But no, it feels really good. Like, I just have always felt like I'm just around my people. I never felt like alienated or weirded out. My people, like, you go to some spaces, you're like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I have never had that experience at a bee anything. They're great. I would say they're great people, generally speaking. Obviously, there's exceptions. So when I went to my first beekeeping conference, that's where I met the guy who turned out to be my mentor, my beekeeping mentor. And I started a mentorship program that we kind of just like designed as we went along, basically, an apprenticeship with him, where I started just attending. I think we were doing once a month or maybe twice a month. Twice a month, I think, when we first started, and then maybe it went down to once a month. I would go to his apiary, which was at his house. He had his whole front yard set up as an apiary. I believe he had maybe 20 hives at the time. 20 hives in his front yard. He was basically running a bee business. So he was catching swarms, he was selling honey, he was selling propolis, he was selling bees and bee packages. And so he was scaling up to really be a full-fledged commercial beekeeping operation. And so I was able to learn a lot. And I think there's a lot of benefit to learning the commercial beekeeping side, just even if that's not what you want to do, because like I said, hippie here. I didn't go into this thinking I wanted to start a commercial beekeeping operation. Like, I already knew coming in, like, that's not my calling. But I knew that I had a lot to learn, and that this mentorship was a great opportunity to learn how things are done in the industry. And so that was eye-opening in a lot of ways. I would say good and bad. I got a lot of hands-on beekeeping experience because, like I said, when he did hive inspections, I was with him. When he was doing swarm catching and swarm removals, extractions, all that kinds of stuff, I went with him and helped. Like, these are things I just wouldn't have been doing on my own. And so it was a great experience. If ever I had a question as I'm like learning and meeting with other beekeepers and like watching YouTube videos and all this stuff, it was a really hands-on classroom experience where I could ask him questions, and we got to a place where where he started to understand that when I was questioning things, I was questioning for my understanding, not from like a place of judgment, because we had established early on that my beekeeping practice was probably going to be very different than his. Again, different, not right or wrong, but just different. And so I think, though, in the beginning, he was a little, I don't know, not offended. Offended is not the right word, or defensive, maybe, that I didn't want to do it the way that he was doing it. But I explained, where it came from for me and why it was important to me to not beekeep the way it's traditionally done or commercially done. Yeah. And then we got to a place where he understood it. So I could just ask questions. It didn't matter. We were cool. So there were no dumb questions. And even if it was a dumbass question, he would say, girl, you should know that. But the answer is, so it was a really good and safe space to like learn a lot of stuff. And actually from that experience with him, from that apprenticeship mentorship situation and going to meetings and just the more I was diving into beekeeping, I really started questioning whether I wanted to be a beekeeper, because the way that it's promoted is like there's only one way to do it. Basically everyone has to do it this way. And the biggest thing for me that I struggled with was treating. I don't want to treat my bees. For me, it's very similar to using pesticides on the farm, which I also don't do. I'm trying to get away from chemicals as much as possible and live as toxin-free as possible. Obviously, it's 2026, so I'm probably not going to be 100%, but what I can do to intentionally reduce my exposure to toxins, I do that. And so it was important to me to not treat my bees. And the industry standard is treating bees. So everywhere you go, every conference, every YouTube video, every article, like everybody's talking about treating their bees. Like it's like the number one thing. And I just couldn't, and I didn't see any options or alternatives. I didn't see any alternatives. And so I was just really questioning whether beekeeping was for me. But I'm glad that I kept diving more into like the academic side of it, the research side, the historical precedents and all that stuff, because I learned so much. I learned so much from that. And I learned that outside of the US, treating your bees is not like the normal thing. Not that they don't do it, but it's not common practice like it is here. It's not as widely encouraged or as widely promoted as it is here. And so I started studying how beekeepers beekeep outside of the US. So I was looking at places like Europe, Africa, I didn't find any in Asia, but obviously I'm sure they beekeep, but I didn't find any. But I was looking at like research papers and articles and YouTube videos and all that stuff. And so finding those gave me hope, basically, that I could beekeep without treating my bees, that it is possible, because everything here in the US tells you that it's impossible. Like if you don't treat your bees, they're just going to die, which is the same thing they tell you about growing food. If you don't spray for pests, the pests are going to eat all your plants. Like there's no way to grow food without spraying. I didn't believe that. I don't believe that. And I don't believe that about bees. And at the end of the day, I decided that I would rather take the chance of trying to not spray my bees and see how long they could live than to just decide I don't want to beekeep. And so I got bees. So I started with one hive, which I got from my mentor. He did a swarm removal. And so I got some wild bees because, again, it was important to me to have untreated bees or bees that had a higher probability of being untreated. I mean, you could like just buzz around a few miles and probably get sprayed with something because we're always spraying something. But those bees have a higher probability of being untreated or less treated than, say, if I bought bees from a commercial operation that sells bees, because they routinely treat their bees. And so I didn't want to buy bees. So my only options to start my bee hives were to catch wild swarms or to catch wild swarms. And so I was preparing to catch wild swarms, but my mentor caught a swarm and he gifted it to me in exchange for like my time and all that I put in for the year that I was mentoring and apprenticing under him. So he gave me that hive, or that colony, excuse me, so that I could start my bees off. And so that's how I started. I purchased my equipment from Hoover Hives. This is not an ad. I don't get nothing. I'm just telling you where I got my stuff from. That's my preference because, again, I'm trying to reduce my exposure to toxins. And so I use wooden hive boxes that are just dipped in wax. They're not painted, they're not sprayed, they're not plastic hives. I know there's lots of different variations, again, to each their own, but I prefer just raw wood hive boxes that are dipped in wax to prevent them from, deteriorating faster. But eventually they will deteriorate because that's what happens to natural things. So it's okay. So yeah, I bought my hive boxes from Hoover Hives. I bought mine unassembled because I am cheap. And it's cheaper to buy them unassembled and assemble them yourselves. So I bought them in flat boxes, unassembled, assembled the boxes, and then put them on the apiary. And then I just installed my bees into my boxes at my farm. And then I have been on a mission to slowly expand my apiary by dividing, or splitting, splitting my hive. So again, I don't want to buy bees because the bees are treated and I don't want treated bees. So I've been on a mission basically to expand my apiary through splitting my wild hives or catching wild hives, which I haven't caught any yet. I haven't even tried because I've just been overwhelmed with farm stuff. But I have been splitting my initial wild hive. And so I have 2 colonies now, and I'm working to expand those this year. I posted a video, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that I added boxes to my existing hives because my plan is to split the hives and then have more hives going into the next winter. So that's the plan. I'm just continuing to split my hives, which is the slow way. You could just buy bees, like if you just want to start your beekeeping journey off, you could just place an order online, they mail them to you, you go pick them up at the post office. Like, you can buy bees, but again, they will be treated, and that's just not my thing. And so I'm going the long, slow, hard way and just letting my bees naturally build up, divide, and all that good stuff. So that's how I'm doing it. So like I said, I have 2 hives now, and I hope to have at least 3 hives going into next winter. I'm debating because I intend to get a honey harvest this year. And so if I divide my hives, I am sacrificing honey, which is what I have been doing for the last few years. Not taking any honey and just letting my bees keep it so they can keep building up. Because keeping with my practice of beekeeping, which I basically have accepted the term biodynamic beekeeping, which is the goal of just mimicking nature and letting the bees do what they do. I don't feed my bees. I don't water them. I don't treat them with chemicals. I don't really do anything. The bees do everything because I believe in and trust the resilience and the knowledge of nature. Like, I just feel like, again, very similar to how I farm and grow food, I don't think nature needs us. And so my goal is to create a space where my bees want to be and where they can thrive, but they don't need me to survive. So like, my bees have survived 2 winters now, two winters now, and they didn't need me. I didn't feed them over the winter. I didn't insulate their hives. I didn't give them water. I didn't do anything. I let the bees take care of themselves. I provided an environment that, like, I'm very intentional about planting forage and, making sure maybe there's some places for water to gather, for them to get water out on the farm and things like that. But I'm not spoon feeding them. I'm letting bees be bees. I don't want to have pampered or like, I'm not trying to raise bougie bees. I want wild bees. That's my goal. I want to have wild bees. And so I stay out of the way. Like, that's my main goal. I only crack my hives a few times a year, because the way I see it, like, I don't need to crack it every few weeks and look in there, because if something's wrong, air quotes, I'm not gonna do nothing. You know, if the queen dies, I'm not buying a queen from a commercial beekeeper and, you know, inserting the queen and like, no. If I notice that a queen is dead, yes, that's bad news. You know, every colony needs a queen, but I won't be purchasing the queen to put her into the hive. I'm going to let the colony requeen themselves. So I let them do what they do, you know, and obviously there's a risk to that, you know, because a part of nature is death. And so some bees might die, and I might not be able, yeah, I might not be able to get honey. I might not be able to split them, you know, because loss is a part of this, right? You know, like that's a part of nature. And so I want strong bees, I want strong colonies, and I want them to be independent and not reliant on me. And so yeah, I just kind of stay out the way and let my bees do their thing. And I do intervene when I want to split the hives, which again, I try to keep my intrusions on their operation minimal, but I do split, and I do, or I will be, extracting honey. I never take all the honey. I don't even take 50% of the honey. The honey is intended for the bees primarily. And yeah, it takes a little while, usually 2 to 3 years, to build up to be able for your hives to provide honey for you. Because the way I build out my boxes or my apiary is the first box that you see on the bottom, that's for basically baby bees. That's where the colony builds up. That's where they make babies. That's where they're like getting stronger. That first box, I never touch that. I don't take honey out of there. I don't take babies out of there. Asterisks. There might be sometimes, but generally speaking, no. I don't mess with the first box. The second box that you add on after the first box is almost full, the way I do it, that second box is food for the bees. Obviously, they put other stuff in there too. They may expand and put babies in there. It's called brood, baby bees. You might find brood in the second box, but the primary reason I let that second box just be for the bees, and that's for feeding them. I don't touch that box. I don't take any bees out of there. I don't take any honey out of there. I might take a frame or something if they've got a bunch of it, but generally speaking, I leave it alone. The first box and the second box, that's for the bees, off limits to humans. Once my bees have filled out the first box and the second box, then I will put a third box on there. And the third box is for human consumption. So once my bees are able to get to a third box on their stacks, then I can have honey. But prior to that, I'm not taking honey from them because I want them to live. And again, because I'm raising wild bees, the loss is bigger for me, because if my bees die because I got greedy and I took too much honey and they starved over the winter, I can't just buy more bees. Again, I know I can, but the way I operate principally as a beekeeper, I won't be just buying bees. So yeah, I don't take from the first two boxes, but once they get to the third box, that box is for humans. And so that's the only place that I get honey from. Once they get it to the third box, then I can have honey. Like I said, that typically takes most hives 2 to 3 years, depending on how you're managing them, how much forage is available, how strong your colony is, all that good stuff. A lot of variables will determine how productive your bee hives are. But my bees have been really strong. I'm gonna get honey this year, I believe. And because I have a third box on, but like I said, I'm probably gonna split one, and so I'm debating whether I'm gonna sacrifice another year, just take a little bit of honey and then split so I can expand my apiary. That's probably gonna be a last minute in the hive situation where I make the decision. I'm probably gonna choose to just expand my colony and not worry about honey. Maybe I'll take one frame out of there, but I don't need a whole box of honey, you know? So anyway, that's how I manage it. I talked about my equipment preferences already. Oh, time and financial commitment. So beekeeping, the way I do it, doesn't require a lot of time because, again, I don't think the bees need me. And so I'm kind of just, yeah, I'm out the way and they do what they do. And so I do intervention usually early spring, February, March timeframe. I might go into the boxes maybe 2 times just to see if I can split or take honey before the peak summer, or if they need another box to continue expanding. I just look in there and see, you know, kind of how the colony is building. I typically do external inspections where I just sit like a maniac and watch the bees come in and out. You know, there's so much you can see just from observation. So typically I do an external observation. I just sit in front of the hives and just watch them. You know, I'm looking to see if the bees have deformed wings or if they're flying strong, if they're bringing in any pollen. You can see it on their little legs. You know, how many bees are coming in and out, what days they come, you know, just stuff like that. External observations is typically what I do throughout the year. And like I said, I'll go into the hives 2, maybe sometimes 3 times in the early spring, February, March timeframe. And then I usually go in again right before winter to determine whether I need to take off a box if they didn't fill it out, because I only keep on the colony the stacks of boxes that are actually filled out. If the boxes are empty, I remove them, because winter is a time where the bees work to keep themselves and their whole colony warm. So I don't need a bunch of, or even one empty box up there for them to just have to warm it. It's just a waste of space. You know, it's like having another room in your house that nobody lives in and you're just heating it. Like, it's it's a waste of resources and energy. And in my case, my bees don't have central heating and air. And so they have to use their energy to heat the space. So I crack the hives again right before winter to see if I can do a honey extraction in the fall, and if I need to remove or add boxes, or how I might need to manipulate to prepare them for winter. So all in all, I do maybe 4, I'll say 4 to 6 inspections over the year. And inspections take, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes usually, because like I said, I'm just looking. Typically, I'm not actually doing anything. If something's wrong, you know, I make a note. I keep notes for my apiary, which is like my bee yard where the bees live, my bee farm. I keep notes for my apiary. So I make a note if I notice that something's wrong. If I notice there's a lot of hive beetles, or I notice there's a lot of ants, or, you know, whatever. I make notes of what I observe, but I don't intervene. I let the bees take care of what they need to take care of. And so I would say all in all, maybe, like I said, 15, 30 minutes per inspection, and I do 4 to 6 per year. So whatever that is. It takes a little bit longer to extract honey. It still doesn't take that, or to, you know, to remove frames of honey out of the hive. I think that might be maybe 30 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time. And so, yeah, from a time perspective, it doesn't require much. Financially, for me, like I said, I don't buy bees. And so that would be the most expensive thing, is buying your bees. I think last I checked, a package of bees was like $200 here in Georgia. And that's what you want for one hive to start your beekeeping practice. Yeah, I think the bees is the most expensive part of it. I don't buy bees, so I don't have that. But I do have to buy my hiveware, my wooden boxes that the bees live in, and equipment, you know, a hive tool, a bee suit, things like that. I actually broke this down in a video. I'll try to remember to link to this. I did a breakdown of every cost for starting a beekeeping practice. If you want to become a beekeeper, what the cost is. But anyway, it breaks out to about $600 to start one hive, to get all the equipment you need, all the tools. And I think that also includes bees if you want to buy a package of bees. It's about $600 to start with one hive if you want to become a beekeeper. Or at least it was at the end of last year when I looked at prices. I don't know all of what prices are right now, so we'll put an asterisk on that and say approximately $600 to start one hive. And what to wear. So I guess I would suggest, if you're just starting, if you're scared of bees, I do want to be very honest, which is what nobody told me. Baby, that beekeeping suit will not protect you from stings. It won't. It won't. Even if you're wearing a full suit. I mean, it matters what you have underneath it. The suit itself. Like, for the people who think it's summertime, I'm going to put on a tank top and some Daisy Duke shorts or whatever, and then put my full bee suit on top. That suit's not going to protect you. You need to have layers. So what I wear is a long sleeve shirt underneath because I want an under layer. I wear a jacket on top that has a hooded veil. And I also have a full suit that I sometimes wear. But normally, if you just wear jeans, the denim is really thick, so it's a lot more difficult for the stingers to get through the denim. So the denim will protect you probably better than those little beekeeping suits that they sell. And so I wear jeans, a long sleeve shirt, a beekeeping jacket with a hooded veil, and I like the veils that have peripheral vision. I don't like the ones that just have the window in the front so you can't see next to you. I like the all around. I can't remember what it's called right now off the top of my head, but where you can see all around. This is all screened instead of just having a screen cut out in the front. I like to be able to see all around me. So that's the hooded veil I use. And on the video that I did last year, I linked all the equipment that I used. And then boots is important. Boots up to your shin, at least, to cover your ankles, because bees like to sting your ankles. And so you don't want to wear sneakers out there. Sneakers will not protect you. They can sting through that. Socks will not protect you. They can sting through socks. And so I wear my farm boots normally, and I put my jeans over the boots so the bees can't go inside of my boots. And yeah, that should be good, because you don't want to get stung on your feet. Yikes. They do sting sometimes. It's not the end of the world. Generally speaking, you won't die. If you will die, maybe you shouldn't be considering being a beekeeper, perhaps. I don't know. But generally speaking, you won't die. It is uncomfortable. I prefer to not get stung by bees. But it has happened. I have been stung. I did not die. I've gotten like 8 stings in one go round. It's annoying. My body's really sensitive to venom, and so I swell up and it gets red and hot. So my body reacts to all forms of venom. For me, my body responds to bee stings very similar to ant bites in how I swell and itch and heats up. And yeah, fire ant sting is what I say it's comparable to, at least for me. A bee sting feels similar to like a fire ant bite, and my body responds to it kind of like a fire ant bite. I'm swollen and itchy in those areas for a few days. It's annoying, so I prefer not to get stung. And so I do suit up. I know you see lots of YouTube videos of people not wearing any type of protection. To each their own. I find bee stings to be annoying, and so I suit up because, yeah, there's always a chance that you can get stung. I think people think that bees just go, honeybees, I'll say, because there's lots of different types of bees, which I also didn't know until I started beekeeping. But all bees are not created equally. But honeybees, they only get one sting for their whole life. So honeybees are not going around just randomly stinging people. Like, no. Because yeah, they only get one sting, and that's it. You know, once they lose their stinger, they lose their life. And so they're not just randomly looking for what's it called? Victims. They're not just going around looking for victims to sting. They only sting if they have to. And usually they give you like a warning, like when you're out in the hives and stuff, they'll like hit you. You know, they hit you with their butt or their face or whatever. It's like a punch. I say it's a bee punch. They'll like punch you. They don't sting you, but they hit you, telling you to like back up. You know what I'm saying? That's your warning shot. They don't sting you right away. But if they have to sting you, they will, because that's their job, is to protect our colony. They are very protective, and if they view you as a threat, then you will get stung. Yes. Yes, you will. But you'll be okay. You'll be all right. I explained my hive box setup already. Oh, but what about varroa mites? So one of the things, oh, my paper. One of the things that you hear a lot about as you start studying bees and beekeeping and attending beekeeping meetings and things like that, you hear a lot about varroa mites. Varroa mites are real. Varroa mites are a threat. They can take over your colony. They can take your colony out completely. They are real. No doubt about that. There are also other pests and threats to your colony. Again, with biodynamic beekeeping, I believe that my job is to help create a situation where I facilitate healthy bees that are strong enough to fight off whatever these threats are to their colony. And so I don't treat for mites or anything. Hive beetles, frogs, wasps, whatever likes to come into the colony, I don't interfere. I let the bees protect themselves, and yeah, I let the bees control their own infestations or whatever. And again, they might get taken out, which means that that colony is weak and therefore needs to get taken out, I guess. Natural selection, right? Again, no different for me than the way that I farm. If I have a plant that's like getting taken over by aphids, it was a weak plant and it needs to be, it's a sacrificial lamb. I'll usually leave it there and let all the bugs just, it's a trap crop at that point. I let all the other bugs just take over that plant because it's weak and it's going to get taken out. And then my other plants can thrive around it and not be, while all the mites and whatever are distracted with that one weak plant. The ones around it are thriving. And so, yeah, natural selection takes over, and if the bees can't defend themselves, thankfully I haven't had any issues. Not any issues. Of course there's issues, but as far as like my colonies just dying and being overtaken, no. So far so good, I'll say. There's always challenges, but my bees are strong, and they've been able to take care of themselves. And I think that, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but very much like a lot of the other chemicals that we spray on our food or we put in our bodies with all these drugs that they sell us to treat different ailments and sicknesses, I believe it actually makes us weaker naturally, not stronger. I think our bodies are designed to fight off infections and things like that. And the more we put in these chemicals to fight for us, we're actually weakening our own natural mechanisms to fight these things off. I believe the same is for farming, and I believe the same is for my bees. And so I don't douse them with chemicals and weaken their natural ability to fend off for themselves. So that's that. Okay, I'm gonna get to some of y'all's questions. I'm gonna wrap it round. What time is it? Okay, yeah. I actually I'm on one of the boards for the Georgia Beekeepers Association, and we have a meeting today, and I need to wrap this up. Question 1, do I have to be certified? Speaking for Georgia, in the state of Georgia, you do not have to be certified. You can be certified, but it is not a requirement in order to be a beekeeper. Can I keep bees in my backyard? I don't know. You need to check with your local ordinances. Check with your HOA, check with your city, check with your state. They will tell you what is permitted in your area specifically, how many hives you can have, where the bees can be placed on your property. That's very location specific, so you'll have to check with the local officials on that. But generally speaking, yes. Most places have very loose ordinances for backyard beekeeping, and they typically allow it in the state of Georgia. Where do I get bees? I talked about that. You can catch wild bees. You can order bees from a commercial beekeeper. Those are the two main places where people get bees. If you have a beekeeper friend, they might let you split their hive to start your hive. That would be great. Got to make new friends. What equipment do I need and where from? I spoke on that as well. Like I said, I like Hoover hives or just any plain wood dipped in wax. Very basic, non-toxic-ish hives. The link for all the equipment that I purchased is in the video that I posted about becoming a black beekeeper, which I will link to this somehow, somewhere. How much does it cost to start beekeeping? I spoke to that as well. It's approximately $600-ish to start one hive. Do you get stung? The answer is yes. I did go 2.5 years actually before I was ever stung by a bee. So like I said, they're not out here just randomly stinging people, like hunting for victims to sting. So stinging's not common, but yeah, you will very likely, if you become a beekeeper, you will get stung, yes. Aren't you afraid? I'm not. I have a healthy, what's the word? I have a healthy respect for nature. I recognize that, nature is stronger than I am as a human. They were here before us. They're going to be here after us. All that good stuff. I know that they are the great era of the species type thing. I need them. They don't need me. All that good stuff. I know my place and I try to stay in my place. But I don't have a fear of them because I think generally they're gentle. In my experience, I haven't found bees to be like honeybees to be super aggressive. There are instances, obviously, and there are times of year when the hives are more aggressive than other times of year. I try not to go into the hives during those times when they have a heightened state of protection over their colony. I typically don't go into the hives. That's like peak summer. No, thank you. Robbing is very common when wasp and pest and everybody's trying to get into their hive because it's normally the dearth. There's not a lot of stuff fruiting and flowering and whatever. And so a lot of things are trying to get into the honeybees colony. And so they're very protective during that time. And so they are a little bit more aggressive then. I don't go into the hives then. But typically they're gentle. I find the buzzing to be very therapeutic. It's very calming for me. Yeah, I find it to be really relaxing. So no, I'm not afraid. How can I find a mentor? I spoke to this. I suggest connecting with your local bee clubs. Isn't it cool that we can be like of a certain age, whole adults here, and still being active in clubs? Community clubs. I think it's so cute. Anyway, I say join a local bee club, connect with your local beekeepers association, get plugged in, start just showing up to meetings. Again, you don't need to have bees to join a beekeepers association or to join a bee club. It's a great way to start, to connect with other people, to learn, to get hands-on experiences with bees, and again, potentially to meet a mentor or someone who'd be willing to let you shadow them or join them on a hive inspection or just hang out with them and talk about bees. I say it's a great place to start. Where should I start? I just answered that. And is it worth it? Absolutely. I love it. I love my bees. I miss them all the time, actually. I actually find it really hard to get work done sometimes when I'm out at the farm because most of the time I feel like I just want to like sit and watch them and just like listen to the buzzing. And I typically build my hive stands with a little bit of space so I have room to like sit. And so yeah, I just sit next to the hives and just listen to the buzzing, watch them work. I love to see them like bringing stuff in and like cleaning out the hive, and just, we have so much to learn from nature. But honeybees in particular, I think there's a lot we could learn as humans, from the way that they operate and the colony and the communal aspect of the way they run their hive. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from honeybees, and I find it really distracting sometimes to just sit and watch them. And yeah, I could talk for days about beekeeping and bees and just nerd out about it. So this has been fun for me. I hope it was helpful for someone, anyone. If I could just get just one person to be like, you know what? That crazy girl, she sounded kind of convincing. I think I'm gonna try it. My life is complete. My work is done. As I mentioned, I'm a part of the Georgia Beekeepers Association. This is a formal invitation. If you're in Georgia, join the club, y'all. We'd love to have you. We'd love to see more of you. It's a great place to start. This is not an ad. I don't get nothing from this, y'all. But I wish someone had told me. I didn't even know bee clubs existed for grown-ass people. So, but they do. They're here. We're out here, y'all. Join us. Come attend a meeting. If you're in Georgia and you just want to join a meeting before you even decide if you want to like join the association or whatever, shoot me an email, hello@yahoofarms.com. The link is in my bio. Shoot me a message. I'm happy to meet up with you. I'll meet you at a club. If you don't want to be there by yourself at a meeting, I'll meet you there. We can hang out. We can go together. I'm also working on setting up what I hope to be like a teaching apiary or like a bee yard for learners. I don't know. It's still evolving, y'all, but I got to find the space first. There's a lot of things to work out, but I have a vision for this year or next year in Georgia, creating a place for beekeeping wannabes, you know, people who just want to explore it, people who want to just try it before you buy all the equipment, before you buy the hiveware or order a bee package. If you just want to see if you might be interested in it, if you want to see if you can overcome your fear to go ahead and jump in and do it. I want to create a space where people who are open to exploring that in the state of Georgia can come and like go into a hive with me and like just try it out. So I'm working to create that space. It's a goal of mine. We'll see how this evolves, but I'm working on it. So hopefully there'll be an update in the coming months about my teaching apiary, because I think it'd be really cool. I'm on a mission like to create everything that I wish existed when I started. And so I think it'll be cool. I hope it helps a lot of people. And if you're interested in keeping up with what I'm doing and with the bees and the farm, make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter, yahoofarms.com. The link is also in my bio. And I think that's it, y'all. I hope I answered most of your questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments of the video. I'll be sure to go through and address them and answer them if I can. If I don't know, I'll just tell you I don't know or point you in the right direction for someone who might know the answer to your question. So with that, I will end this, y'all. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Remember, you can't grow all the food the people need, but the people need all the food you can grow. And in this case, that includes bees and honey, which is all a part of our system of creating and building food, y'all. So let's become beekeepers. We could do this. We could do this, y'all. All right, I will see you live again tomorrow. I'll be joined with my sister, Growing Where I'm Planted. We'll be live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you there. Bye.